This is how the best become the best. This is how the 1% rise above the 99. It's a simple process, but I'll tell you now, most people are just not going to be willing to do it. But if you are not most people, then check it out. What is up? I am Harbor with Extra Credit Design Club, and today we are going to talk about how to really master your craft, how to become the best at what you do, and how to do it as fast as possible. Now, this video is going to be broken up into 3 parts. First, I'm going to hit you with the why. Not why we all want to be the best, because we all want to be the best. But I am going to hit you with why most people don't become the best. Sounds kind of weird. Obviously, most people can't be the best by definition, but I think it will surprise you. In the second part of this video, once we understand the why, I am going to hit you with the good stuff. 5 practical steps that you can take, things that you can do that most people aren't doing to master your craft. I'm going to start with the obvious ones, but towards the end of this video, they're going to get real spicy, super valuable. Then finally, part 3, I'm going to address some doubts. Mainly if you're thinking, but I want to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. I am going to hit you with why mastering one craft will help you master a second, third, fourth. And I'm going to talk about the importance of having your reach always exceed your grasp. Part 1, why 99% of people don't reach that top 1%. Often we look at creative industries, maybe our creative industry, and we look at that top 1% of people and we think that they just got something different. They're wired differently. They have access, were bestowed from birth with some divine creative kiss on the forehead. But let me tell you, that is not the case. Yes, talent does play a part and helps people get going quick right off the gate, but it certainly is not the most important factor to success. Really what it boils down to is it's super easy to say we want to be the best, to even believe that we want to and can be the best. But when the rubber meets the road, it is a lot more difficult to do what it takes to become the best. Often, it's because we simply don't know what to do. Hopefully, this video will take care of that. It will give you the knowledge, but then it will be on you to act. And this is the hard pill to swallow. This is the mindset. Most people are unwilling to change their behavior. People will change their goals, their beliefs, their core values often before they're willing to change their behavior. Now, it may seem by definition that being the best will put you in that super narrow 1% of the population, but let me tell you this, there is plenty of room for you in that 1%. Now, I do want to pause right here for 1 second. I keep saying like, oh, you're going to be the best, you're this and that. The last thing I ever want to do is to make you think that you are going to be better than other people. Absolutely the last thing I ever want to think. Like I said, there is plenty of room at that top 1% of skilled craftsmen. And in fact, in step number 5 of the practical steps, I talk about how helping other people become their best will inadvertently help you become the best. So I just wanted to pause while I'm saying, yo, you're the best, we the best, DJ Khaled or whatever. I don't by any means want to put anyone else down, and understand that I am talking about creative endeavors, careers, and not people as a whole. You could be the worst graphic designer on the planet Earth, and I will still love you because you are on the planet Earth. So have that mindset, obviously, while you listen to this video. The second thing that holds people back from really pursuing becoming the best is a little bit of fear of criticism. It's scary to internally decide that I'm going to be the best and I'm going to do whatever it takes. It's a whole different level of scary to tell other people that. Once you do throw it out there, I'm going to be the best there ever was, is what's going to happen. Most people are going to dismiss you. Some people are going to laugh at you. Some people are going to think that you are arrogant. Like, who are you? Of course, everyone wants to be the best, so what makes you the chosen one? Well, you make you the chosen one when you do the things that you need to do to become the best. You become the best. The third thing holding people back from becoming maybe I should say their best is this. It is a race without a finish line. You are going to need to constantly, for the rest of your life, be pursuing and trying to discover what your potential is. You need to resign yourself that you can never stop learning, never stop pursuing the knowledge and the skill set. It's a race where the further you get ahead, the more ground you gain, the more you have to lose. And that pressure can be a lot. It can be very mentally exhausting, but also it can be very, very exciting and fun and fulfilling. So, a lot of trials, but also a lot of rewards if you pursue this path of becoming the best at your craft. Now that we have that established, let's jump right into the 5 practical things you can do to rise above the 99% and enter that top 1% of your creative field. I'm going to start with the obvious ones in 1 and 2, possibly even 3, but number 4 and 5 are going to be what really, really are going to set you apart from the crowd, so stick around there. Remember, if you're not most people, and most people probably aren't watching at this point, but hey, congratulations on that for you. Number 1, clearly and specifically define the craft that you will master. This is where most creative people go wrong because, I'm guilty of this myself. I want to pursue every exciting idea that enters my mind. But if I'm trying to pursue graphic design and type design and video editing and 3D design, there just aren't enough hours in the day. And the person who's going to focus on one of those things and spend 40 hours a week doing one of those things is going to be able to rise above the skill set of the person who can only spend 10 hours a week focusing on 4 individual things. That is a bit of an extreme example, but even just saying, and I said this for a long time, I want to be the best graphic designer in the world. It's too general. Now, I did make a whole video about the importance of specializing within a creative industry. If you want to check out that video, you can do so here, or I will put the link to it in the description of this video if you want to watch it after this one. Once you have defined the craft that you are going to master, you will start to notice that within the umbrella of your craft, there are smaller crafts that you can master. As an example, if I want to master drawing the human face, I could draw 100 faces and I'd get pretty good at drawing faces. However, as I'm going about it, I'll start to notice, I'm pretty good at drawing eyes. I'm good at drawing eyes. I'm not really, but this is an example. So I'm good at drawing eyes, but I suck at drawing ears. So you can define within your craft more specific areas that need attention. And if you do that, you'll say, okay, instead of drawing 100 faces, I'm going to just draw 100 ears. It will be a lot quicker than drawing 100 faces. It will be more challenging, but If you can focus and notice the crafts within your craft and understand where you can put your attention, then you will be able to master your craft even faster than if you just have the umbrella of, I want to draw a face. No, that's not the case. You want to draw an eye and a nose and an ear and hair, and you want to shade the cheek and the bump bump. So once you dive in and start practicing a craft, pay attention and try and dissect what is within that you need to master. But that dips a little bit into the second step you need to take. This one seems obvious. It is you need to practice. In a word, you need to practice often. Here is an example. I love JRPG video games. I love how complex they are. How you have to choose your character, you have to choose your moves, you have to choose the equipment that you want. There's a lot going on. I love them. But here's the problem. If I don't play a game for like a week, when I try and jump back in, I forgot what was going on. I forgot what equipment I had. I forgot why certain members are in my party. I forgot which moves are good against which enemies, and I just kind of have to restart. Don't make your creative craft like this. You never want to jump into it and ask yourself, okay, where was I? Why did I do that? Was that what? And you never want to have to be relearning. Yes, learning a craft, there's always a little bit of learning and relearning, but you want to minimize that. I'm not saying you need to practice 8 hours every day. I'm not saying you even need to practice every single day. I personally like to take Saturday off as much as possible, and I'm always taking Sunday off. I just get burnt out if I do more than that. The important thing is you never want to be jumping back in and thinking, okay, where the heck was I? What was I doing? If you can be consistent, whatever that means to you, do that. The second point of how to practice effectively is you need to practice and you also need to play the game. If I can hit you with a basketball metaphor, practicing basketball looks very, very different than playing a game of basketball, and thus it is with your creative craft. Don't get hyper fixated on little details. Make sure that you're always going back, and everything that you learn, you are applying to the craft as a whole. If you only learn to draw an ear, but forget how to draw the face entirely, it's not going to do you any good. You can learn a lot from hyper focus, and you can learn a lot from zooming out and playing the game. Now, before we move on to number 3, let me just tell you, this is where things get exciting. Because if you think about it, 100% of painters paint. They have defined their craft, and they're practicing their craft. So if you only do step 1 and 2, you are going to be in the 100% of painters, completely indifferentiated. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to go with it. Step 1 and 2 were just the baseline. Once you have your baseline, you're in the game. Steps 3, 4, and 5 are really going to start to differentiate you from the crowd. Step number 3 is find a good mentor. When I first started trying to sell fonts, I went 3 months and sold 0 fonts. But I was super desperate to make it work. I was like, I'm committed 100%. So I started to reach out to mentors. And wasn't like, be my mentor. This is what I did. I was trying to sell on Creative Market. So I went on Creative Market, sorted fonts by most popular. I looked at the most popular fonts, the ones that I liked. I messaged the designer. And I messaged probably about 20 designers saying, hey, I'm new to this field. I really respect your work. It's awesome. Is there any way that you would be able to have a call with me and give me some guidance? I'm having some trouble. I'm committed. I love the craft, but I'm not really making any sales. Of those 20 or so people that I reached out to, like 3 got back to me, and only one of them was willing to actually help. So we scheduled a call. I talked to him. He gave me some great advice, was extremely generous with his knowledge, and wouldn't you know it, that month after I talked to him, I made 33 sales. I went from 0 to 1 to 2, 3, 4, boom, 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 because I was able to talk to a mentor. He was generous enough to share with me, and that definitely put me on a trajectory that was much different from my peers just starting in type design. If I could give one piece of advice when choosing a mentor, it would be to choose the best of the best. Now, being in a university setting is definitely a mentor-apprentice relationship. However, unfortunately, all too often is the case unless you go to some fancy dancy art school. The person teaching the class is just going to be the best in your hometown, or maybe even worse, they're just the best who was willing to teach. So while universities can be valuable, they're not the end all be all. I have been able to find very, very valuable mentorship outside of university settings, just reaching out to the people who are doing the thing. If you cannot find a mentor who can specifically look at your work, specifically diagnose what you need to do to get better, the next best thing is reading. Don't get me wrong, you should have a mentor and you should read. One doesn't cancel out the other, but I just needed a way to transition into step number 4, which is read about your craft. Here is an example that kind of follows the same pattern as the last. When I started doing YouTube, I was grinding it out. I was doing what I'm doing now. I was doing 1 video a week, every week, for about 6 months. And at the end of those 6 months, I had 200 subscribers, which may seem like a lot, but it was essentially just my friends and family and a couple other people. Then, at the end of October of this year, I read this book right here, Daryl Eves' The YouTube Formula. That was at the end of October. And now the time I record this at the end of November, I have 2,000 subscribers. Even though I very specifically defined what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a graphic design YouTuber who helped people master their craft and make a living outside of a traditional 9-to-5. Very specific. And I was practicing. Every week I was making a video. But it wasn't until I read about the craft of YouTube, read a book about it, that things really started to click. I learned things that I would have never learned from simply practicing the craft. Now, I will say this about the YouTube formula and Mr. Daryl Eves. Back in 2017, after I had just graduated from college, I actually worked with and alongside Daryl Eves, who wrote the book, for about a year. Now, that was 6 years ago, and I had forgotten all of the specifics that he taught me about YouTube. And you may think that, oh, well, you worked with him in person for a year. That's such a great advantage. Well, yes, I did work with him in person for a year, but for 6 months doing YouTube, I was no success. Flatlining. It wasn't until I then read his book that things changed. And here's where things are even more interesting and bizarre. The things that he taught me when I was with him in person every day are no different than what is in the book. The information is super, super, super generously shared. I can't think of any specific thing that he told me that he didn't put in his book. And I want to really hone in this point. You might be saying to yourself, oh, well, I watch videos about my topic, or I do courses about my topic. That is not the same as reading, and especially reading books. I have found that the type of person who writes a book is the type of person who is very passionate and very knowledgeable about the subject, and is also very, very generous about the information that they share, compared to a person who is simply writing a script for a YouTube video or maybe doing an online course. Oftentimes, their primary motive is to make money. They don't have this deep rooted generosity that I have found that people who write books have when it comes to sharing knowledge. Don't get me wrong, I have done many an online course myself, thinking about teaching one myself. But I would much rather advise you to spend $25 and buy a book before you spend $200 or $2,000 for an online course. Generally, this is just my experience. I get more out of a book than I do from watching. Now, you may be saying to yourself, if you are saying to yourself, reading is just difficult. Trust me, I understand that. I relate to that. I feel you in a deep way. When I was a child, in 4th and 5th grade, I was in the special ed reading classes. While everyone else was learning their times tables, their long division, somebody would come and take me out of class, and it would be me and 6 of the other kids in school who were the worst at reading, and we would spend time practicing reading while everyone else did math and I don't know what else because I wasn't there. I struggled with reading really until I was about 18 years old, and then I wanted to date this girl, and she said that she vowed to never date anybody unless they read Harry Potter. So I read Harry Potter. I practice a lot. That's a freaking long series. And, I'm still a very, very slow reader, but now I love to read because I love to learn. I read about things that interest me. And yes, while listening to podcasts or watching videos is also very valuable, definitely more valuable than doing nothing, I have found that the active nature of reading has something to it. When you're listening, it's passive, but when you're reading, you need 100% of your focus to be on the intake of information. It takes more time, takes more attention. When you sacrifice your time and your attention, you value what you replace those things with much more. One last note on reading about your craft is that you are going to be better off reading for 1 hour and practicing for 7 than you are practicing for 8 hours. If you think or say to yourself, there's just not enough time in the day, I promise you that if you sacrifice 1 hour of work for 1 hour of reading, the rate at which you will be able to work will be so much more effective, and you will master and become faster at your craft much quicker than if you just practiced without reading. Okay, we are on to the last tip, and let me just say at this point, if you've stuck around, you're definitely not most people. I can see the stats of this video, and most people have stopped watching by now, but not you. So I'm going to hit you with tip number 5, in my opinion, the most valuable thing, the one that most people are not going to do. That is, write about your craft. 99% of people in your industry are not regularly writing about their craft. Maybe it's writing a book, maybe it's writing in a blog, maybe it's writing scripts for YouTube videos, whatever it is. If you are regularly writing, you are going to put yourself so far ahead of most people when it comes to the speed at which you will learn skills and obtain knowledge. Nothing will force you to recognize your weaknesses and your gaps in your skills and knowledge than writing about it. And nothing will put the pressure on you to fill in those gaps, learn the skills, obtain the knowledge, than publishing that writing to the World Wide Web. So while writing, yes, does help you recognize your weaknesses, I would encourage you to go one step beyond and publish your writings. Even if no one sees them, the pressure of this exists out in the real world, so it should be good and accurate, is very, very motivating. Now, when you go to write about your craft, you may find that you have nothing to say. That is a good indicator that you need to do more reading, more practicing, and more critical thinking about your craft. Now, at this point, another doubt that you surely have, that we all have when it comes to this, is you might be thinking, well, I'm not an expert. I don't have anything to say. And that may be true. But hear this, you will never become an expert and you will never have anything to say if you don't force yourself to become an expert and force yourself to have something to say. And there is no better way to force yourself to do those things than to write. I know it's a bit of a catch-22, but let me explain it with this story. I had been doing type design, making fonts, for about a year when I decided to publish a Skillshare class. I for sure was by no means, no stretch of the imagination, an expert at designing fonts. Nonetheless, I decided that I wanted to write and publish this class. Now, I look back at that class. Obviously, I'm a much better type designer now, and I look and I say, ooh, some of that class was pretty dicey. But nonetheless, thousands of people have watched the class, and thousands of people who knew nothing about type design got an introduction. Like 90% of the information was good, solid, accurate. Maybe 10% of it was a bit dicey. I was still somewhat new myself. But I would much rather be generous and give someone, 90% of what I have than never write about it, never share my knowledge. And those thousands of people who watched the class and got into type design would have never done so. I was creating the thing that I wanted to see in the world when I was learning. And that brings me back to what I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is that being generous with your knowledge, not gatekeeping the skill set, your resources, having the mindset of, yes, I want to be the best, but I want everyone I ever talk to also be the best. So I'm going to share everything I know about type design, everything I know about business when it comes to graphic design, everything I know about creativity and graphic design, and 90% of it might be tight, 10% of it might be dicey, but I am going to generously give everything I can because I know that it was done for me when someone didn't have to share that knowledge, and it helped me in such a significant way. And having that mindset will help train you that, yes, there is plenty of room to get to the top. I want to get there. I want to help all of everybody around me to get there, and it just makes the journey so much easier. So with these 5 steps, defining your craft, practicing your craft, finding mentors who have mastered the craft, reading about your craft, and writing about your craft, you are really going to set yourself apart. Think about it. 100% of painters paint, but how many of them are reading regularly what the best painters have to say? Maybe 50%? And then of those, how many people have a mentor who is really going to be honest and teach them and all of that, even a smaller percentage. And of those, how many of those do you think are regularly writing about their craft? I'm telling you now, 1% of people are practicing, have mentors, reading, and writing. Now, I don't know if that's like fact check safe, but that's just my assessment of the situation. Now that we understand why most people don't reach that top 1%, we understand the steps that we can take to get us there, I want to leave you with this thought. Mastering one craft will help you master a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth. Mastering one craft is the most valuable thing you can do to master many. You can master 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 crafts so much faster than trying to master 5 things at one time. Because mastering a craft in and of itself is a craft, not to get too meta on you. Mastering something is a skill set. And once you obtain not only the skill set of the specific craft, but the skill set of mastery, you can take those things and the sky is the limit, baby. An example of this in my real life is this. When I was 19 years old, I moved from my hometown of Utah to the Dominican Republic for 2 years. And I put myself in a situation where I was forced to learn Spanish. But I decided that I was going to have to learn Spanish. I wanted to really try and master it. For 2 years, I studied Spanish every single day. I read in Spanish and about the Spanish language every day. I spoke Spanish every day, and I wrote in Spanish and about Spanish every day. If I had questions about the language, I would ask people who spoke the language much better than I did. And after 2 years, I spoke much, much better Spanish than all of the other foreigners who were around me also trying to learn Spanish. And it wasn't because I was just exceptionally gifted at learning languages. In fact, when I first started learning the language in my classes, I was the bottom rung, baby. I was the butt of all of the jokes because I was bad. But what I was that was different than everyone else was I was committed to every day reading, writing, speaking, and I had the mindset of if I'm going to learn this, I am going to learn the crap out of it. Now, that was years ago. It has been 10 years since I studied Spanish daily or really at all. But this last year, a couple months ago, my wife and I took a trip to central France. Brive-la-Gaillarde, if I said it right. If you know it, that's where we were. Now, before the trip, leading up to it, my wife was getting super excited. She was on the Duolingo, talking about oui. She was learning French. I was lazy. I was not. So, when we get there, to my surprise, I found that I understood a lot of the French language, a lot more than I would have thought for never studying it. Dare I say, more than my beautiful wife. Bless her heart, and I'm not throwing shade at my wife. She is actually exceptionally talented at learning languages. But she did the Duolingo. She learned French in high school even. But when it came down to it, with the same amount of studying that I did when I was there and she did when she was there, I was able to understand a lot more of the French language because I had previously mastered the Spanish language. Anybody who speaks 3 languages will tell you that the second is easier than the first, the third and the fourth and the fifth, and each one you learn is easier than the last. And it's like that with the creative industry. You will be surprised about how hyper-focusing on mastering a specific craft will broaden your knowledge and skill set and enable you to master a second and a third and a fourth thing much faster than if you are focusing on 4 things all at one time. Remember that mastery in and of itself is a skill, and once it is acquired, it will serve you so much better in obtaining a wide, broad knowledge than if you just tried to do so from the get-go. But that's it, and that's all. This information in this video came a lot from this book here, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto. If you want to check that out or that YouTube book out, there will be a link to buy both of those in the description of this video. But that's it. And that's all. I'm Harbor with Extra Credit Design Club. If you like what you see, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next.